Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 creative coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's both my pleasure and my mission to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaway, so that way yours can be a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into what my past week was like, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already, that way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, the big thing of this past week was we essentially began filming for my second feature film. Now, it was just the green screen stuff, meaning like the very technical stuff that we could do right here in LA, because the rest of the movie takes place in Colombia on location, and so we wanted to separate out the two. We won't be going for another month and change to Colombia to film the bulk of the stuff, like 97, 98%. But nonetheless, we just wanted to, do the green screen stuff. So that's primarily creatively what things were leading up to this past week. But before I even really get into that, it's interesting as we're planning this movie and the various things, and as the world kind of opens up and I'm interacting with more people, you start to, I've always kind of known this, but it's just always good to have a good reminder of everyone has a different metronome in life. And what I mean by that is, a simple example is when you walk, right? Oftentimes, whenever I walk, I'm a lot faster than most people. And it's not that I'm trying to necessarily go fast, it's just my natural inclination to have a little bit of pace to it, and because I just like to, I'm not hurrying, but at the same time, I'm not taking that pause unnecessarily, right? And one of the very first episodes that I ever did was No Hurry, No Pause. And that's kind of really what it is. And so, I like to have this consistent beat of just, doing something. And it's not to say that I don't ever rest. It's not to say that I overexert myself and so forth. But yeah, and certainly I'm not claiming to be the hardest working man in showbiz by any stretch of the imagination. Certainly there are hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands, of people who work far more than me. But the key to my life has always been just this continued consistency, just beating that drum at the same pace, right? And it's fascinating, to observe, oftentimes, with my stuff, there's people, and not the people involved, but, there's, at least in the early rounds, like when I kind of come out with an idea, I do try to get various people involved, and they might take some time to think about it. But what they don't realize is, once I have an idea and I commit to it, the train is leaving the station, and it's really up to them to then hop on board, right? Because we're going, and it's just going to pick up momentum the longer it goes. And that's very difficult for people. And I don't think people understand that. And it's not just a phenomenon for me. I think it's a lot of creatives, that we can call them successful. I won't put myself in that realm necessarily, because I don't want to toot my own horn in any way. But, the ones that people look up to, they have that sort of way about them where everything is just, the trains have to be kept on time and so forth. And if there is, let's say, and forgive me because I'm mixing up metaphors, but like a flat tire, they fix it right away. They don't dilly-dally, right? Because otherwise it slows them down. They fix the problem immediately. In fact, just today, for some reason, I was having tech issues, right? And it was annoying, and it definitely bogged me down. But what would have been worse is not handling the problem right then and there and just getting it over with, so that way I didn't have to deal with that issue moving forward, because I know the pain that would be, towards my workflow and everything else. And this is kind of this is a hard concept to grasp for a lot of people that are perhaps starting out or so forth. That idea that, if you want to be involved in something, most people, if they kind of, especially the ones that that can get stuff done, if they share an idea and they kind of say like, hey, I would love to have you on board, whatever. You can ask for like, hey, when you need an answer by, and generally I'm pretty good about saying like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, but I'll need one way or the other, I need a commitment by this day. And once that date passes, I always leave it, I'm like, hey, if that date passes and you change your mind, there's ways for you to be involved, but it's going to be a lot more difficult. And it really is, because things progress, and I think ultimately what I'm saying is there's a lot of people that I've seen miss opportunities because they were debating whether or not it was a good opportunity, as opposed to just sometimes going with your gut. It's not to say you have to jump on every opportunity. Like, I think more often than not, we actually do know whether something is right for us or not. And, a lot of the stuff that I've kind of spoken about in the past, the idea of defining your clear objectives. Once you have those clear objectives, and then it becomes intrinsic to you to know whether or not something fits within that, is going to be beneficial, or you can just easily say no to it, right? That's the aspect that pretty much every self-help aspect that I've studied has a version of just saying no. Like, you have to have an ability to decline. And that's a real skill set, right? But part of it is knowing why you decline something and what you're saying yes to. And so the first step is defining your priorities, so that way, as I said, when opportunities arise, you know if it's correct for you or not. To me, it's become more second nature in that way to see things as such, whether for myself or when friends or anyone else comes to me for advice. Because as I kind of really thought about it, certainly in the last few years, I have spent and dedicated myself to learning how the impossible becomes possible. Back in the day, a 4-minute mile was unheard of. It was like, no one can do that. And all it takes is then one person to really do it, which happened, right? And then all of a sudden, it just clicks in people's brains of like, okay, well, that's not impossible. So it's doable. And then all of a sudden you have this influx of people being able to do the 4-minute mile. It's like, well, it's not like all of a sudden they got that much better, but just that mental blockage is gone. And so they can push themselves and be able to do that, right? And it was something that I was speaking with my friend, a filmmaker, and we were talking, and I was, because one of the things that's like daunting on some people is this idea of you could call it an aggressive shoot schedule. And it's like, okay, but, between the budget constraints, between everyone's time commitment constraints, and, us wanting to make a good script, it's like, it's the only way all those fit together to do it. Now, it might seem crazy, but it's not. Anything I've ever done really in life is based on something. And, my friend was making the argument like, okay, it's not an apples to apples comparison. I said, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean I can't take little pieces and be inspired by them and fit them into my puzzle of it, right? And I think he finally came to my way of seeing it. But that's what I really pride myself on, is the ability to fit together pieces to make things possible. Last week I did an episode, how you should make a hero list. And you can check that out. But really, a hero list is basically there to serve both as inspiration, confidence, but really a blueprint for any future projects that you may have. The argument with my friend that I said, it's like, if someone's never written a full novel, what gives them the right to go ahead and do that? It's like, there's no basis for that. But I said, except you look at your past history. Okay, speaking for myself, it's like I love to write. I love to write. I did it in high school, and people really gravitate towards it. Now, that was short stories and things like that. Okay, sure. But at least I have that side of it, right? I have dedication. So, I played soccer in high school. I played soccer in college. So I'm dedicated. It also shows that I know how to utilize my time. I'm self-motivated. I don't need someone else to push me. So these are just a few of the things that when you start to look at them and combine them, you're like, okay, well, with all these things, it doesn't seem as crazy for this person to write a novel, in this case, me, right? And that's the way we have to really approach life. And that's how I, I try to build on the things that I have in my life, in terms of the creative projects that I pursue. Very early on, one of the things that we talked about in terms of this upcoming movie is I would like it to be better than my first feature film. And I think people hold on to that for dear life. And what I think they're not realizing, right, because it's all about perspective, really, is that we already managed to accomplish that. With my first movie, I basically had one other person on set with me, right? And we had a budget of $5,000, and we were shooting kind of, we didn't have any rehearsals, right? We just kind of showed up on set, the script was there, and we did it. And, I'm very proud of the result and things like that. But that's what we had. Now, going into this one, we have a crew, right? We've done rehearsals. Our budget is far more bigger, certainly not like huge in film terms, but compared to $5,000, it's a lot bigger. So it's like we already managed to make it better than my first film just based off of that. The script is, I've developed as a screenwriter, so that's even better. So all these things. Now, all we have to do is capture it, right? Capture the performances as long as the acting's good. And, me and my co-cinematographer, we're continuing to collaborate and figure all that out. And, there's things to continue to do. It's not like just because we are better already than my first film that like the end result is going to be there. But we're taking the steps. Like we already have the ingredients, if you will, to be able to pull off something that's more special than my first film. And that's exciting. And it's exciting to me because I really love my first film, right? I'm not knocking it by any, but yes, I think in life, it would be foolish not to want to progress and evolve, right? And that's exciting to me. The other aspect of it, a cinematographer named Alwyn Kuchler, who did the Manchurian, Steve Jobs, and Divergent, among other films, he was on a recent episode of the Team Deacons podcast. And one of the things that he was talking about was this idea of liberate yourself from the choice. Meaning, as I mentioned with our movie, right? We're constrained by the time, we're constrained by the budget, and so forth, right? And, and also really by our ambitions. And so it's like, okay, that's what we have to work with. And rather than lament over about the things that we don't have, because we don't really have a choice, right? We don't have the choice in the matter. So liberate yourself from that because you don't have that choice to begin with. So just embrace what you do have. And that's what I love. And that's when I talk about how the impossible is made possible, that to me is a fundamental ingredient of it. It's just the getting rid of this chattering in your head of what you don't have. Because of course, there's so many things, I don't care, you'd be surprised, right? That's why I love the Team Deacons podcast, is because it exposes me and other listeners to projects that cost $200 million, let's say. And yet they still face the issues that a $5,000 movie faces, that a $50,000 movie faces, that that $1 million movie faces, that a $50 million movie faces. Like, no matter what the budget, it kind of ends up being the same things. We're always strapped for time, believe it or not, resources, and all that stuff, right? Scheduling conflicts, I know that's a timing thing, but still, it's a separate version of that. So, yeah, it's just we can't escape it. Like that's ever present, and so don't lament on it. Liberate yourself from the choice, as Alwyn says. So yeah, that's kind of mentally how I've been approaching this past week, and certainly moving forward and so forth. And one of the ways, speaking of this idea of making this movie better than my first film, we're also really defining the costuming, right? We're spending a lot of time on picking out the right costumes. And as part of that, it's also about the hair and makeup. So last week, I spent a lot of time, what we would need in terms of the makeup. What would the guys need? What would the girls need? And speaking with all of them of like, what are your individual needs, like concerns and so forth. What makeup do you already have? What makeup don't you have? So, getting all that stuff so it's ready, right? And that's exciting to me. It's a world that I'm not that familiar with. I mean, I know the basics, but it was exciting to sort of deep dive in and kind of continue, progressing in that way. So again, that's already making this movie better than my first film, because that was something I wasn't doing on my first film. Not that we didn't have makeup and, so forth, but this is just more of a conscious effort towards that. The other aspect, based on a production meeting we had the week before, and just, I reread the entire script and I marked it up just based on revisions that needed to happen because of production, and a couple of other things that I learned about Columbia, and that I wanted to kind of enhance or whatever. And so I reread it for that, but also I was, it's been a while since I really examined just the script, and so I was able to look at certain things and be like, okay, this was a story plot that was there from a while ago, and now it's kind of really taken a back seat, so we can really just kind of get rid of it. Other stuff like how do we continue to compress and just make the strongest possible script. And I went through it, and it was actually pretty easy. And then once I had the whole thing marked up, I went into final draft and just went page by page of the revisions. And I thought for sure, I don't know why I thought this. I don't know. I thought it would take me like a day or something like that to really address the notes. And it turns out it only took me like an hour and a half, which was exciting. And so, I went through that and boom, sent that off to production, to the cast members. It's not grand changes, but there are, again, just finessing things. It's small changes that have big impact. That's what I'm really interested in. So I worked on that. Now, the big component of this past week is, as I mentioned, leading up to the film shoot. So this was the green screen stuff, and certainly we could have saved this for after production, but it felt like a good way to just get our feet wet. Even though it's a very technical shoot, it, at least by having it kind of a month and change in advance of production, we had enough time to rest and recuperate after, but also kind of really get into a rhythm with each other on set, and just do some good stuff, right? Now, when I say green screen shoot, this is beyond just it's beyond having someone against an environment that needs to be put in, right? This is kind of very physical, and really combining a couple of tricks to pull this off. And it's something that I've done a version of this before, but never to this extent. I wrote it in specifically into the script, knowing that I wanted to push myself with this, and because it's an important but still small part of the movie. So I almost treat it like just a fun way, like almost like shooting a short film, right? That's how I kind of approach this. And, leading up to it, I had an idea of how we were going to pull it off, but then last week I really spent watching, YouTube videos and really honing down precisely the ways in which each shot would be constructed. Because we're talking like, the great part about green screen is that you can do pretty much anything, really, right? The downside is you have to really know and think about, because you have nothing to interact with as an actor, as a production person, right? In this case, me as the director slash co-cinematographer, I got to really think about the angles, how it's going to cut together, and part of it is, it's like a magic trick. For example, there was this one part, in order to make a shot possible, we had to film the actor's top half, arms, chest, and stomach, and then his bottom half, his legs, and so forth. And in the edit process, we have to combine those two together. But it's just such a funky way of like creating something. And yes, mathematically it will work and so forth. But it's just so insane on the day. It's like none of like just observing it. It's like, this is just silly. None of this should make sense. But of course, if you trust the process and you study it and you do tests and things like that, then yes, it is obviously very possible. But getting to work with green screen now this is like another aspect where really kind of utilizing it. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it. I see it as a tool and things like that for when I need it. I'm still getting comfortable with it, and so it was great to have there was 4 of us on set. It was great to have everyone's mind be able to collaborate and really help drive it forward, right? But going back to I opened up the episode of like building confidence and things like that, right? So without this short film that I did called Playtest, I wouldn't have the confidence to do and pull off what we just pulled off, because I needed that short film to really teach me various things with green screen and so forth. And it gave me the confidence to, even though we're trying something that I have yet to do, it gave me the confidence to know, okay, I've done something that I hadn't done before, and I did it with green screen, and the result came out, and I know the shortcomings of that, and I know how we fix it moving forward. And so for this, I was able to combine that knowledge and build on it, right? So that's the exciting part. So yeah, and it was fun also, like from a costuming standpoint. I had a last minute idea that I think story-wise is really exciting. I think it works really well. So a lot of fun stuff. It was a good day of filming. And as I joked with the actor yesterday, even though this was the first thing that we filmed, it'll be funny because it'll probably be the last thing that gets finalized for the movie, just given the nature of it, right? We have to rotoscope out the green screen, put in the backgrounds, apply all these various effects to it, and yada, 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 right? So, but it's going to be exciting to see. And this coming week, I'm just going to edit it together, the green screen stuff, and so that way it can go, while we go off and essentially film the Colombian scenes, someone can be working on the, keying out the green screen, putting in the plates, as we like to say, the plates being like the background stuff and so forth. Unfortunately, I won't have my feedback during that time, but at least like things can move forward, right? So another reason why I wanted to do it before filming in Colombia versus after, right? Because I wanted to have as much time to create this sequence as we needed. The other aspect of it being, but when we get back, they were heading into Thanksgiving and then the holidays, so I didn't want to eat up people's times because I knew it'd just be tough to really get people in the mindset and so forth. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of the long and short of everything of what I've been up to this past week, how I'm thinking about things. And yeah, this coming week, a lot of logistics, working with my producers to really start ironing out the details, because we're approaching that 1 month milestone, and then then officially the countdown of 1 month begins, and we'll blink and we'll be in Colombia, and that's exciting. Thank you for taking the time to tune in. As always, if you have any questions, thoughts of your own, whether about anything that I talked about or things that you want me to discuss, comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. Would love to hear from you. Thank you. I appreciate you, and hope to see you next time.